Welcome to our community. Susie Thomas with you this morning. Very happy to welcome Amy Shriver-Drucy. She's from the League of Women Voters. Good morning, Amy.
Good morning, and thank you for having us on your show, Susie.
So, nothing big happening this year, right? No,
not a thing.
Nothing on your plate.
Yeah.
So let's talk first of all about the fact that women's suffrage has been celebrating, or would have been doing lots of celebrations of its 100th anniversary. Tell me about that.
That's right. So it took a very long time for women to get the right to vote in this country. I think a lot of us are familiar with Abigail Adams' quote to her husband about remembering the ladies.
Yes.
Well, it took a while, but 100 years ago...
He forgot the ladies.
He did, and so had everybody before him, and for quite a while after that, they forgot again. So, women getting the right to vote was an undercurrent, politically in the country, but it became bigger after 1848, and women started to more overtly seek the right to vote. And it was a very interesting movement because women acted in ways that seems unbecoming to the female gender. They protested, they marched, they picketed outside the White House, and eventually the country agreed that it was a good idea to give women the vote. So that happened 100 years ago.
They looked spectacular doing it. They were dressed to the nines, yes, and they did it. I think they did it in a very ladylike, very peaceful manner.
Well, it seems like that to us now, but I think at the time it seemed pretty disruptive. I mean, there was, as you can imagine, mixed sentiment about it. Some people just thought that, truly a woman's place was in the home and that they shouldn't, confuse themselves with all this foolishness that they couldn't understand.
Well, okay, help me understand this, because a woman can be a wonderful homemaker and still knowledgeable about current events and still be able to take a moment, step out of the kitchen and go to a voting booth and then step right back into the home again. What was the argument?
Well, I think we have the benefit of hindsight now. We see that it was successful. Yeah. But truly, there was a sense that women's brains just were not that well formed and that it was kind of dangerous to women themselves to be trying to take on too much. And as well, there was a concern about if their attention is split between inside and outside of the home, that was going to be problematic for their husbands and their children.
But didn't all those husbands remember how their wives were influencing their vote when they were the only voters in the home?
I think sometimes. I think there were as many opinions in a lot of ways as there were people, and there was a lot of divisiveness around that. Certainly there were men who supported the movement, and there were women who were against it. It's not unlike what we see today, divided ideas about issues.
Sure. We really can't paint anybody with one paintbrush. There's always another way to look at something. And you're right, we're looking at this through a different lens. And you kind of think, why wouldn't women vote? My goodness.
Well, that's the good news. We look at it, and we look at it as a decision that was a wise one. We have that ability to have that 2020 hindsight and go, what a great idea that was.
2020 being the operative word as we're talking about the year as well.
Absolutely.
Women taking on the responsibility of voting then, how did that affect outcomes and so forth? Have we seen an effect? Is there a woman's vote?
Oh, it's a great question. And there's a lot of discussion about that. I mean, sometimes I think we measure these things simply because we can, right? Mm-hmm. But, there is a tendency among, political campaigns to look at that woman's vote and to try to, aim specific advertising and ideas and positions at the women's vote. Speaking historically, I think a lot of people draw a link between the women's suffrage, the success of the women's suffrage movement, and prohibition, because a big part, so so before women, were a suffrage movement, there was an abolitionist movement and there was a prohibition movement, and in many ways those came together as part of the movement for suffrage for women. So a lot of people draw that direct connection between prohibition and women getting the right to vote. And, women got the right to vote even before they did at the federal level in a number of states, particularly out west. I think it was Montana or Wyoming was the first state to give women the right to vote. Here in Ohio, I believe we gave women the right to vote on things like school board elections and things like that. So there was sort of this recognition that there were natural issues that women were interested in.
It eased in. How much lapse of time then happened between women actually getting the right to vote and the formation of the League of Women Voters?
Virtually none.
Right away. So, okay, we got to meet. We got to get organized.
Was the American Women's Suffrage, North American Women's Suffrage Association, such a terrible name for a group. But that was the group that came together and was successful in getting the franchise, and then, paused for a second, and then they went, oh, wait, we've got a whole group of individuals out here who may not understand what a primary election is, who need information about candidates, and so voila, the organization morphed into the League of Women Voters. And our chapter here in Canton is one of the oldest in the nation.
Really? Well,
Very
something
cool
else to
history.
be proud of. That is right. Talk to me about it. Tell me a little bit about our chapter, their goals and mission and what they attempt to do.
About our chapter?
Sure.
Okay. So we are a nonpartisan voter service and voter education organization. So what we do is try to facilitate access to voting, and even more importantly, informed access to voting. So we have a Facebook page. We have a web page. It is CantonLWV.org, which is a wonderful source of information. We're going to have coming up shortly our voter's guide. We are justifiably, I got to say, proud of our voter's guide. We publish between 10 and 12,000 copies of the voter's guide every year and distribute them around the county. We also have the voter's guide on our website. And so what we do is send out questions to candidates for local office, because oftentimes it's hard to get information about where those people stand on issues.
Yes.
So we do that. We have them provide, some biographical information. And so it is a tremendous source. And if I could please mention Mimi Bogart and Carol Schoenhoff, two members who every year, twice a year, put out a voter's guide and do yeoman service to the community.
It's knowing where someone stands when they are running for something that is apart from any party affiliation. And so you can't say, well, this person would be going with this platform because you have no idea. Are we able, I'm thinking of judges and so forth, are we able to get that kind of information from the League?
Well, what we've seen our league do is join in with the state league and the national league. And so we've got some specific efforts aimed at more information about judicial candidates, because we realize, because those are, as you said, nonpartisan races, that we need to make an extra effort to get information about those individuals. So we've got links to all of that on our website.
That's wonderful, because nonpartisan is great, and you do want your judges, with that blindfold on, weighing, the truth and so forth. However, they are people, and you know that they believe things, and you kind of do want to know where they stand on certain issues that matter to you.
Absolutely, absolutely, and they're such important jobs.
Yes, yep. Well, it all is. So is yours. My goodness, keeping us informed and knowing. All right, let's take a look at what's happening in November here and across our country. How does a person really sift through all of the noise and make a good, wise vote where they can look at themselves in the mirror and go to sleep with a clear conscience? How do you get through the noise, Amy?
Well, I'm a retired professor at the University of Akron, and what I always tell my students is the absolute worst way to make a decision about who you're going to vote for is on the basis of their advertisements.
Oh, amen.
So I would say step away from the television.
Yes, and social media.
And social media, and just filter that noise out right away. Mm-hmm. And so this is why I feel like our job here, and, we're all volunteers here at the League, I feel like our job is more important than ever because we've got billions and billions and billions of dollars being spent every year to try to convince us to vote a certain way. And, that's not in our best interest typically. That, we need to get genuine information. And it's why I joined the League.
Yes.
Because I was looking for a source of information, actually for my students, to do a project around an issue that was on the ballot in the state of Ohio. And it was hard until I found the League. And I have to say, it's a wonderful organization, and I'm so proud to be a part of it.
I steer away from yes and no questions, but I'm going to ask one, and then feel free to elaborate. When the League of Women Voters puts together their things, they are being nonpartisan. Do you do
1,000%?
1,000%. Does the League of Women Voters do a better job of that than the current media?
Well, it depends on what we're talking about when we talk about the current media. I mean, if we're casting a broad net, we know that there are a lot of very irresponsible sources of information. I'm putting information in air quotes, but I guess you can't see that.
Mm-hmm. But I heard them, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's why I think we're more important than ever is because I find that people have a hard time sifting through. We always think, oh, these young kids, they really get this. Oh, no, they don't. My students at the University of Akron are very astute at the hardware,
Mm-hmm.
But the content, they are as buffaloed as anybody else.
Yeah.
And so it's difficult. It's difficult to sift through the noise, as you said, and get to what's important, but that's why I think the League of Women Voters is so important, maybe more important today than ever.
I'm going to say yes, more important this year than ever. And we're only in September, so buckle up, right?
Oh, my goodness, it's already been a bumpy ride.
No kidding. You talk about young people. How impassioned are they in wanting to vote and making their voice heard?
They're like everybody else. They're a mixed bag, but I find that my students are generally very excited about the opportunity to vote. But it helps that I, frankly, push that.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Because it's they do have the lowest voter turnout of any age cohort, and which I find astonishing because, as I keep saying, the decisions that are being made today are going to affect you for years and years and years and years to come. Just letting us old geezers make these decisions is just not really the same impact.
Yeah, and they get that?
Yes, they do.
Those
not
in your
100%,
yes.
but I love nothing better than to see on campus one of my students coming up to me and say, Dr. Drusi, I voted because of you, or I've been paying attention to the news because you convinced me that was important.
That's got to be very rewarding. We are speaking with Amy Shriver-Drusi. She's with the League of Women Voters. Going to find out more after these words. You're listening to Our Community. Welcome back to Our Community. Susie Thomas visiting with Amy Shriver-Drusi, talking about the League of Women Voters celebrating 100 years of providing us with nonpartisan information so we can make wise decisions when we pull behind that curtain and punch that ballot. Okay, let me throw out some terms that we're hearing a lot about these days and help me understand. I'm not going to pretend that I know the difference between mail-in voting and absentee voting. I don't. They
Okay.
seem the same thing to me. So please help me understand.
Okay. So there are really three ways to vote.
Okay.
Right? So the first is Election Day, November 3rd, going to your polling place and voting, right? I mean, the way that the traditional way. However, there are also two forms of what we call absentee voting. So absentee voting and mail-in voting are essentially the same thing. But let me talk about the other way we can vote absentee. In Ohio, we have in-person early voting.
Okay.
Okay, and it's it's a recognition that some people work far away from home and have difficulties getting to the polling places on Election Day. So that starts October 6th. There is only one place that Stark County voters can vote early, starting on October 6th, and that's at the Stark County Board of Elections. The Board of Elections is located out on Route 62 at the intersection of Route 62 and Regent Avenue Northeast in Canton. Mm-hmm. So they've got hours for early voting, and you can find those specific hours on the Stark County Board of Elections website.
Okay.
Right, and so they'll make them. They'll make your individual. You're going to need your ID. Let me mention that in both of those cases, you're going to need to have identification. But when you go to vote absentee early voting, you will get your individualized ballot, the same ballot that you would get on Election Day in your polling place.
Okay. Now, I need an ID when I go in person, either to vote early or if I just go to my regular polling place.
Yep.
Do I need an ID if I decide to mail in my absentee ballot?
Your signature is your identification in that case, and you have to provide, identification to indicate, that it's you. Either your driver's license number or the last four digits of your Social Security. And one thing I'd really like to say, Susie, is that I'm concerned about all the disparaging comments being made around the professionalism of our election professionals. They are professionals. They've been doing this for years and years, and they're good at what they do.
Yes.
And it's disturbing to me that people are casting aspersions on their professionalism, because I think in Ohio I can speak of most clearly. They're professionals. They're good. Voting in Ohio is really secure, and that includes absentee ballots. Okay, so that's the third part of it. So every registered voter in the state of Ohio has by now received an application for an absentee ballot, right? So, our military and overseas voters have been doing this forever.
Right.
Ohio has had extended, access to absentee voting for about 10 years. So, you send in your application, and then your ballot will be mailed to you. They're going to start doing that at the same time as they start absentee in-person balloting at the Board of Elections. So that'll be October 6th. They're going to start sending the ballots out.
Okay. So be watching for that. Watch our mailboxes for that.
Absolutely. But I guess we've got horse in front of the cart here, because even before that, you have to be a registered voter.
Yes.
If you have not received an absentee ballot by now, it may be because you are not registered to vote.
Is there still time for someone
Yes, there is.
Okay, good.
Voter registration ends October 5th. So there are a variety of ways you can do that as well. Again, you can go to the Board of Elections. You can register to vote online. The Ohio Secretary of State website provides you access to that. Mm-hmm. We've got some flyers that we have posted on our website that you just hold your cell phone camera over, and the QR code will take you to the voter registration site.
Wow, how cool is that?
Well, it's really been helpful. We've got some flyers with access to a lot of information because in the pandemic you want contact free.
Yes.
Active.
So we got better at things. We got better at some of the things. I think one of the things that surprised me first time I ever voted back in the day, and maybe some of your students are surprised when you step in and you go to vote for President of the United States, and there's like 20 names there. And you're thinking, who are all these people? So tell us, who are all those people?
Well, it doesn't take a lot
to run.
To run. You just file some paperwork, and I think you pay a little money, and you can run. And, I've done that as an assignment for my students because it is sort of amusing some of the interesting people that, run for president and have, their big topic. There was one fellow years ago who his big concern was the zombie apocalypse, and that was why he was running for president. So it's a source of...
Did that on a dare, I think.
Well, I suspect, but I think he sort of perpetually runs. But there are a lot of political parties in the United States. I mean, we call ourselves a two-party system because functionally that's what we are. I mean, who's in Congress? They're all Democrats and Republicans. Who of our presidents been Democrats and Republicans? Third-party candidates actually had their best showing in maybe forever in 2016, and I think it was 7% or something.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and that was huge. But it's a really tough row to hoe for third-party candidates. They don't get a lot of respect. They don't get access to that federal money that you pay on your taxes. It's just really tough for them to get their message out, and so they don't get a lot of support, which makes it harder to get their message out.
So that's if you're voting for all the names that appear, but we also have the opportunity to do a write-in. How does a person do that?
Well, just as the term implies, you can write in a name.
Where would you write that in if you're standing at an electronic booth and you're pushing buttons?
Now, I've never done it, but I know there's a place obviously on the absentee ballot.
Asking for a friend. No.
Yeah. There is a way that you can do it, but I can't say I know. My guess is, so you go to vote in person, and you want to write somebody's name, and you may have to ask for some assistance.
Okay, so anybody that might be on their mind, that's another way to have your voice heard. Go and when you arrive, and if you're thinking, I'm going to write in somebody's name, ask and let them know that at the beginning. That's the way to do that?
Yeah, I would say.
Okay. I'm wondering, there's probably some people thinking, this would be interesting to get involved with a League of Women Voters. What do you do when the elections are not happening? What do you do the rest of the year?
Well, we're always concerned with those issues of voter access and voter information. So, we have, we typically, this year we've not done as much of this because of the pandemic, but we will have forums around issues and around candidates. That's more our election season thing. This year we've been so busy focusing on the mechanics and helping people understand that, absentee voting and voting in Ohio is really secure. We've been working on that. But we do informational programs. Unfortunately, when this pandemic hit, we had a bunch of programs scheduled.
Yes.
We were doing things about the history of women's suffrage. We had programming, around, excuse me, we do a lot about discerning between fake news and real news. We've done some programming around that. So, we just try to do whatever we think is going to be helpful to citizens and voters in better understanding our wonderful system.
It's a shame that so many of your celebration events got canceled. Is there any chance that, I know it'll be like an extra year, people would understand any of these programs going to come around in 2021?
I think that's under discussion. I know that we were in the Hall of Fame Community Parade last year, and I know everybody really enjoyed that. We were in some of the other community parades too, so I think there's still interest in the Centennial, and interest that'll continue into the next year.
How do people join?
Well, again, I'm going to direct people right back to that website. Okay. It is CantonLWV.org. And although we have women in the title, we've got a number of male members. We just never changed the name.
My very next question, can men become involved if they want to?
Of course.
Well, tell me about, for you personally, how rewarding has this been? What drew you to it? You kind of hinted about that a little earlier, but tell us about your own experience as a member of the League of Women Voters.
As I said, I came in when I was trying to find a source of unbiased information, and what I found was just an amazing group of individuals who are dedicated and concerned. And, I think it's hard for people to believe that people can be nonpartisan. Mm-hmm. These days, we do a great job of it. And maybe the most surprising thing to me was, how much fun we have.
Yes.
It's just a great bunch of people that we manage to do important work and enjoy and have fun while we're doing it. I mean, does it get any better than that?
No. When you're talking off the record to each other, do you find that both parties are pretty equally represented, or are you basically all of one mind?
We try really hard not to go there. We really do. And I think sometimes when we're off the record or discussing privately, we will talk, but we tend to, it's amazing. Mm-hmm. It really is amazing. But it seems to me that we've got a good representation across the board, and that to me is really important. Okay. That is really important.
Got something for the suggestion box I'm dropping in right now. Could you do some seminars on how to behave that way for the rest of the country to kind of learn how to act?
Yeah. Wouldn't it be nice if we could do etiquette lessons for
Wouldn't
the
it? Yeah. Wouldn't it? And to be able to get through Thanksgiving dinner, no matter what happens here, it's going to be interesting. All right. Well, we certainly appreciate all this good information from the League of Women Voters. Amy Shriver-Drucy, thank you so much for all you do in our community.
Oh, thank you, Susie. It was a pleasure, and we're hoping that we can get more involvement in the community because everybody's vote matters.